Welcome to the Indie Film Hustle Podcast, episode number 215. People say there's a million ways to shoot a scene, but I don't think so. I think there's two, maybe, and the other one is wrong. David Fincher.
Broadcasting from the back alley in Hollywood, it's the Indie Film Hustle Podcast, where we show you how to survive and thrive as an indie filmmaker in the jungles of the film biz. And here's your host, Alex Ferrari.
Welcome, my Indie Film Hustlers, to another episode of the Indie Film Hustle Podcast. I am your humble host, Alex Ferrari. Today's episode is brought to you by Blackbox. Blackbox is a new platform and community that is all about financial freedom for filmmakers like you. If you join Blackbox, you will be transformed from being a worker to being a maker of your own content, and you'll be making steady passive income from the global market. Blackbox currently allows you to upload your stock footage once, get it to many global agencies, and then allows you to share that passive income stream with your collaborators. Whether you want to submit old footage that's been sitting around in your hard drives or create brand new content, Blackbox is for you. It's really quite revolutionary. With Blackbox, filmmakers can concentrate on making great content while Blackbox takes care of all the business BS. Just visit www.blackbox.global to find out more. So guys, I am packing as we speak, but I said, no, I got to get another podcast out this week before I head out to Sundance. And if any of the tribe is going to be out at Sundance, come out and see me. I'm going to be at the Slam Dance Black Magic presentation on Saturday between 2:30 and 4:30 up at Slam Dance in the main hotel at the top of the hill. And there'll be a small mixer between 5 and 7 at Slam Dance as well, where they'll be giving drinks out and everyone's going to be hanging out. Great place to network. And I'll be hanging out there as well. So please come by. I'd love to talk to you. I'd love to chat and talk some shop. Oh, and as a bonus, I was able to talk Black Magic into giving some stuff away. A little bit of a raffle. They're going to be giving away a Video Assist 4K, a DaVinci Resolve Micro Panel, which I would love, a DaVinci Resolve Studio full studio version, and a Fusion Studio license as well. So all you got to do is just show up, put your name, get a ticket for a raffle, which is free, and you guys can win some of that too. So I hope to see you guys there. I'll put all the information for the event in the show notes. Now, today's guest is Cole Walliser. Now, Cole has directed music videos, commercial, high fashion spots, and done some crazy stuff. And has worked with some of the biggest stars in the world like Katy Perry and Pink. And he did all of this without going to film school. And that's what I really wanted to highlight in this episode. Cole went out and just hustled his way into a job and many jobs after that and learned along the way. And I just wanted to bring him on to show you guys that you don't have to go to film school to succeed in whatever you're trying to do. Everyone has different paths. Some people like film school and it's great for them. Other people don't. It's just different options, but you don't have to go if you don't want to. So without any further ado, enjoy my conversation with director Cole Walliser. I'd like to welcome to the show Cole Walliser, man. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Of course. Thank you for having me. I'm super stoked.
You know, we've never had a commercial director, high fashion kind of guy on the show because we focus mostly on indie film. But that's my roots. My roots come from commercials and music videos. And then that's how I kind of transitioned into independent filmmaking. And I still do those every once in a while as well. But there's a lot to be learned, especially in today's world, about, the commercials and music videos and digital content and a lot of the stuff that you're doing. I think there's a lot of lessons to be learned. So I'm really excited to get into it with you.
Cool. I'm super happy to share. I mean, I think that the landscape of filmmaking and content creation is changing rapidly, as we all know. So I'm happy to contribute to the plethora of information you're putting out there. This is great.
Thanks, man. So you didn't go to film school. So how can you share how you became a world-dominating director like you yourself?
Well, I'm still on my way, but I appreciate the compliment there. For me, it started with, I think a lot of people too, this kind of occurs this way, like through skateboarding and snowboarding. So I used to skate.
Spike Jonze model.
Exactly, totally. Yeah, the Spike Jonze route, you know what I mean? A little bit different route overall, but still the same sort of beginnings where it's like, we would just film each other skating, and I kind of had a knack for it. People would just generally hand me the camera more often than not. Like, oh, Cole, you can get cool shots. You know how to shoot this stuff. So I started kind of getting into it back then. This was like in the 90s. Then learned how to edit VCR to VCR. And then I was like, oh, let me try to tell like a story, or let me try to shoot something, and it just basically progressed and got like one little job, like a tiny little thing and a tiny little thing. And it just kind of like worked my way up essentially.
You are based in LA. So were you doing this all in LA?
No, I'm from Vancouver, Canada originally. Mm-hmm. So that was a big
That's why
thing,
you're so nice. That's why you're so nice.
It could be a part of it. Yeah. I try to perpetuate that stereotype for sure, being a friendly Canadian. But yeah, I was in university, like going to school. I have a degree in psychology, and during my schooling, I started, I bought a Mac, I bought a DVX 100A.
Yes.
And yeah, they're like, that's my roots, like mini DV 24p. I was like, this footage is amazing.
Yeah, it's just like Final Cut just like they ingested it beautifully. Totally. It's just so work. Yeah. Well, don't get me started. DVX 100A.
Yeah.
The DVX 100A was the beast, stuff. Man. That was the beast of its day.
So, I really started getting into it during college, and, I would just do my school, but like go home and shoot and edit. And then so in the midst of it all, I just decided, I was like, well, what do I want to do? Like, I enjoyed my degree, but like, what am I going to do with a psychology degree? And I'm like, I really want to be a filmmaker. Mm-hmm. At that point, I was like, I got to go to LA, because for me, there was no avenues back then for someone in Vancouver to direct. There was a big film industry up there, but it's like, it's crew, it's gaffer grip,
sure.
Whatever. Right.
Sure.
So I was like, if I want to direct, I got to go to LA. So I got a lawyer and got the whole deal and made the jump. And that was 11 years ago.
Mm-hmm. And you just literally landed, and it's like, okay, let's start making stuff.
Yeah, basically. So the other part of my background is I still dance, but I used to dance a lot. I used to, b-boy, break dance, and like do hip hop choreography.
Sure.
And so when I came out to LA, my group of friends were very much involved, and still to this day, like very much involved in that world. And so for me, being a video shooter and editor back then, dance obviously was the easiest / coolest thing I could shoot. And so a lot of the stuff I did back then was involved in the dance community. And that actually got me my first couple big breaks. And so, for me, it's just like, it was really helpful to have that, because otherwise it's like, it's just so easy to make cool. You know what I mean? Like shooting dance is like, you get people to just do some cool stuff and you're like, oh, my footage is awesome. You know what I mean? So that was like the easiest way to like make some cool stuff. At the top of my career for sure.
No, so basically you were using, because there's so many people that come, 11 years ago showed up to LA and trying to be, mm-hmm. Try to become a director, but you use what you had, your resources you had available to you, which was your talent as a dancer, to kind of open up, to get into that kind of subculture. And then start growing from there. So similarly to, and I'll use Spike Jonze again as an example, because I studied Spike's stuff back in the day in New York, and he was just constantly doing these skateboard videos till someone found him. And literally in a club, they were watching some videos up and like, who shot that? Oh, that skinny kid in the corner.
Oh wow!
and then he started getting commercials, and then from there it took off. But it's interesting because a lot of people always want to know, how do you break in? How do you break in? And how long did it take you to get like that first gig after doing all those kind of cool videos?
I mean, it wasn't, there's a moment that I attribute as sort of like my quote unquote big break, because there was sort of like my first bigger job for like a major artist. But like I had been sort of quote unquote working prior to that, even within the dance community. So one of my first jobs out in LA was like editing dance like reels and choreography reels and shooting little dance numbers for dancer friends. So those were like my first jobs, you know what I mean? But it was just like a friend going out, shooting a dance video in a park and cutting it together and like putting it on DVD, because YouTube like wasn't even a thing back then. You know what I mean? So those are like my first kind of little jobs. And again, like, I started getting better and started charging more, but like my first break job it's kind of this thing for Miley Cyrus. So in 2008, she did these online dance battle videos where like two crews of like dancers, one from the movie Step Up 2, and Miley Cyrus and her whole crew of dancers like had these online dance videos. And so the dance community, everybody's friends with each other. But I was better friends with Miley's choreographers. So these two women, Allison Falk and Teresa Espinosa, I've been friends with them for years. So they're planning to do this dance video and they asked me to shoot it. So that was like the first thing that I had with like a major artist, because at that time, 2008, like Miley was Hannah Montana, like just taking over the world, right?
Sure.
So that was like a really cool thing for me to have something kind of like on, out in public that people were talking about. And I met a bunch of celebrities and stuff through that. But it still was like everybody kind of get together and like shoot this little thing.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show.
From there, Allison went on to choreograph for Pink for her 2009 Funhouse tour. And she brought me on actually, I came for free. She wanted to get some footage of her working with Pink. So I just started hanging out 1 or 2 rehearsals and shooting some stuff. I met the tour director, I met her, and they brought me on for like a couple of days BTS. In that mix, they needed the opening video for her tour directed. And Dave Meyers, who's a huge music video director, he does all her music videos. He was going to do it, but their like time was short. They didn't have that much money, and like they needed something done. And so they just took a chance on me and asked me to put together a budget and see if I could do this little opening video for the tour for cheap. And I was, of course, like, oh yeah, like I'll do it. You know what I mean? So I feel like that was like the first job that was like, for a major artist, for like a more traditional platform, and that they really like took a chance on me. So I sort of attribute that big break to working with Pink.
Now, would you also say that, because I talk a lot about on the show about when to work for free and kind of stuff up. My first big job was because I worked for free for 4 months just hanging out because I had nothing else to do. And then they finally just like, hey, he's been here for 4 months, let's give him a job. And so do you feel that your personality, being nice, being someone pleasant that you can sit with in a room, which is also a very big, factor in these jobs, as well as just offering your services up for free because you saw the value of doing that? Is that obviously one of the keys to getting your big break?
Absolutely. If I wasn't willing to come shoot rehearsal for free, I would have never gone down that path and never started working with Pink. And like that turned into like an 8 or 9 year working relationship across a number of albums, across a number of different types of media with her. You know what I mean? So like it was this huge thing. And if I was like had an attitude about it, like, like you need to pay me to show up, which people do. And like I have that attitude sometimes too, you know what I mean?
Right.
Definitely. But if I didn't sort of like see the potential value of that and be okay with working for free, I would have never had this career path. And so many subsequent things came from that moment. Like my whole career sort of was based on that, because from Pink, I got Katy Perry. And then from both of them, I started doing CoverGirl, and then CoverGirl led to Pantene and Almay, and like all this other stuff started from me going, oh yeah, I'll come shoot you for free for a day or two. Sure. Why not? You know what I mean? Like just being willing to invest in that, I think is hugely valuable. But you have to be, you can't work for free always. You got to pay your bills, right?
Of course.
So it's important to find that balance. And what you were touching on too, like these other factors, like when you first get into directing, it's like, my vision of it is like, oh, like here's a guy that is really creative and has all these really cool ideas. And yes, it's a huge part of like being a director, especially in like the music video and like short form content world, come up with cool ideas. But there's so much more to like you said, sitting in the room and like having a good meeting, or like, being either good to work with or being good at communicating, or just being like a good manager and team builder. Like those facets of directing are so much more valuable than I ever thought. And it took me a while to like be in that world and working as a director to really realize those lessons, So from the moment you landed in LA to the moment you got that job with Pink, the working for free, how long was that? Well, I drove. And my car broke down. No. Not from the literally when you landed in LA. How long did it take in general? Like how many months, how many years before you got that? Let me think. Pink was, I guess, 3 years. Okay. I started in LA 2006, and I started working for Pink 2009. Miley was 2008. Pink started in 2009. So. And you were just doing any job you can get along the those situations. Just a ton of dance stuff, like editing, choreography reels, shooting dance numbers, a couple little music videos. There's a ton of dancers that are trying to be artists, so we did music videos for them, and just anything I could shoot. I was down to shoot. You know what I mean? So the reason I'm asking is because I want to impress upon the audience that like it doesn't happen overnight. And before you even got to LA, you had already had years of work that you were building up in Vancouver. Absolutely. I was shooting a ton of stuff in Vancouver. It wasn't like when I landed in LA, it's like, oh, I'm here in LA and I'm going to start shooting stuff. It was it was years, just staying in Saturday night being like, oh, I'd rather edit something than like go out and party. And especially at like 21, you know what I mean?
God,
But
can you imagine?
I found myself wanting to stay in and wanting to just like create stuff on my computer rather than go be social was more satisfying for me.
Now, can you discuss a little bit about your work with digital content? Because I feel this is an area that a lot of filmmakers don't even know about, and it is a potential place where they could start working.
Yeah, absolutely. It's growing exponentially, and it's really, I've been fortunate enough to sort of be in the mix, and even with some of these really big ad agencies, as the tides are sort of changing in this respect, right? So when I first started working for CoverGirl, which I think was, I don't even know the year, 2010, 11, I think. There was just like Facebook. I mean, YouTube was a thing, but like we would make some content and like, okay, we're going to put it on Facebook, right?
And Facebook wasn't Facebook in 2010, 2011 yet. It was still
not the way it is.
Yeah, it was growing. It was growing. MySpace was still all the rage.
Yeah, definitely, right? But we were like making content. There was like kind of some ways to put content out, but it was just good to like have behind the scenes, whatever, right?
Sure.
And it was very much like, for a campaign, they would do a print ad, a broadcast ad, and then like they'd have me or somebody there just shooting some behind the scenes. That was like the very first thing. As time went on, like as a few years started to pass, they started to realize, and I started to realize that all of the eyes on their, like from their demographic were not reading magazines, were not watching TV. They were consuming almost all of their media from digital content, from social media, from Facebook, from Instagram, from YouTube. And so there was a moment where, the ad agency pulled me and this other still photographer that does a lot of this stuff together aside and was like, okay, here's the deal. We don't care about broadcast. We don't care about print. We only care about what you're doing, because what you guys do is what our sort of demographic, consumes. And we were like, oh, this is crazy. Like, it's been, the broadcast and print ads have been standard for decades,
Yes.
And so now they're going like, we don't care about that. We care about what you're doing. So the pressure was on, but then also I was like, well, can we get the budgets that you give out for the broadcast ads? So, but it was interesting to see it grow. And, over time they start giving us more bigger budgets and like more to do as far as digital content, because there's so many outlets and so many formats, and it can be annoying, but there's a huge market, because that's really how people, especially young people, consume media these days.
And what is exactly the digital content? Just basically behind the scenes commercials for? Well,
it originated as behind the scenes, but now we do like our own content. So, it's hard to put in a box, because it's really like really anything.
It's anything, yeah.
It's anything. But like there's really cool jobs, and even I got a job just recently where I flew to Albuquerque to shoot like an Instagram story and make a little video from this like hot air balloon event. But I was like, this is awesome. Like, I get to go to this cool event. Sure. But like, and the budgets was like not bad, like like worth my time. And granted, it was just like me and another guy. We hired a local guy too, just a small crew. But we're there just to make a really cool Instagram story. And I was like, there was a revelation for me. I'm like, oh, companies are like putting money behind this content. They realize how valuable it is, because it's such good target marketing. It's like everybody who follows that company is interested in that company. So if you're making good content, you're going to engage them, rather than the traditional media, print ad. It's like, only 10% looking at that print ad is caring about what you're saying. So it's like, it's very low targeting. You know what I mean?
Right. It's getting away from the interruption marketing, as opposed to more of a content marketing.
Yeah. But it could be short form. It could be anything from, like an Instagram story video, or, an edited piece or whatever. But the cool thing now, what brands are doing, which I'm finding really exciting, is they're basically paying for cool ideas by just attaching their brand. So there's a big market nowadays where if you have a cool idea or a cool story you want to tell, you can basically go to any company or go to like a marketing company and be like, hey, I have this story about, these like this homeless skateboarding crew that's super cool. You know what I mean? And like, I want to go tell this story. You can partner with a brand. The brand's going to give you money to tell that story, and then they're going to just use it, as a thing that might go viral. So it's like companies are now funding all these really unique stories that are short form, anywhere from like 3 to 5 minutes,
Yeah, so kind of like what Casey Neistat does on YouTube, and those guys, all those YouTubers do similar stuff like that, where they go
Totally,
off,
yeah.
and they get sponsored by Samsung or Red Bull or. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show. Something like that to go off and direct a short film, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's just there's infinite amounts of opportunities and options in the digital sphere right now that actually have money behind them.
And it's growing exponentially, like you said.
Absolutely, yeah. So it's an exciting area, and for me, like when it started, I was not against it, but like growing up, I was watching broadcast commercials. So I'm like,
Sure.
I want to do broadcast commercials. Like, I don't want to do this like digital stuff because at first, nobody was doing anything cool on it, right?
Sure.
But now I'm like, oh, everybody's making cool stuff, and it's a great sort of ecosystem to be a part of.
Yeah, it's like being a YouTuber in 2005. Not very sexy.
Yeah, no. But now it's like, yo, there's YouTubers making a ton, making like 200, 400 grand a year off making YouTube videos. And I'm like, wait a second.
Some are making that a month.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, the top ones are making millions, but like there's a huge population that like people you don't even know about, and they're making a couple $100 grand a year.
That's what I find fascinating about the whole landscape, is that there are people out there, because before there was only three channels you could watch, and there was only so many movies that was it. That was all it was. Mm-hmm. And all the stars were the stars. There was Tom Cruise, there was Brad Pitt, and these are the stars. But now you've got these little guys like on YouTube somewhere with 5 million followers, pulling in like $1 million, $2 million, $3 million a month. I mean, a year.
Yeah.
And just like, who the hell is this? That it's kind of, instead of trying to hit the broad market now, everything's become much more niche. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. It's like you can find your lane, anywhere, and like build a brand and build an identity that you can then market. It's so crazy, the power that there's so many good like pros and cons with the way it's working right now. Mm-hmm. But the pros is like you really can be in control of your own fate as a content creator. Oh man, there's people. Hold on, I gotta shut my window.
Lawn.
Gardeners are out there. Oh well, no, I lost my train of thought.
You were talking about content creators and making your own brand.
Yeah, there's just so much opportunity to find these niche markets, and I think that's like what Netflix is doing really well. The world of like network TV is so different, and like it's so hard to successfully make content in that world. I had a TV show in development with NBC for a number of years, mm-hmm. and just the revision, like the idea changed a million times from the original pitch. But in that process, I learned about how, their approach on making TV. And like they basically, because it's so expensive and because they're putting so much behind it, they need everything they put on TV to be a hit. And that's why they cancel shows after 3 episodes, because if it's not a hit, they got to put something else in there because it's just too expensive to do. Mm-hmm. Whereas you have Netflix, and that's why also like NBC or networks, like it gets watered down because they need like 3 million people to watch it. So it's like broad. You never get super broad, and like everybody is just like, it's okay, but like you don't get to dive in any particular topic or niche because they're trying to appeal to everybody. Whereas
same thing with movies. Yeah,
absolutely. You know what I mean? Whereas Netflix, it's like it doesn't really cost them as much to put it on. They just, push upload, right? And so, but their model is so different, where it's like they'll pay for 10 shows, which is the cost of one network show, and maybe 8 will be horrible, but 2 will like just pop. And then these 2 are such these like niche things that people love. It's a much better way to create good content, to be in these niches. So it's like, with your own branding and with your own social media or your own content, you should look at that digital model where it's like finding your own lane to create something that either hasn't been creative or have your own identity, or like creating something that people can connect to, is a far better way than trying to appeal to everybody like the networks have historically been doing.
Now, when you were working with your first big star, like Pink, let's say, mm-hmm. What was it like on your first day on the set?
Well, okay, so with her, I showed up at rehearsal, and met her, and I knew some of the dancers and stuff already. So that was like a very nice, like chill introduction because it was just like me hanging out there doing the thing. But the first day on set, I was like, we shot at her house, and that was like, I was definitely nervous because it was just like such a big thing. And I'm like, oh man, like I'm making this video for like, it's going on tour for a year and a half, and like 15,000 people are going to watch this, like, is the first thing of her show. Like, pressure was on for sure. So definitely just nervous going in. But I feel like the actual day of, it was fine. I just made sure I was super prepared as far as like shots and what we needed and what the plan was.
Right.
Because I definitely didn't want to be caught on set going like, I don't know what to do. You know what I mean? Which happens sometimes. So I was definitely nervous, but I think I probably over prepared. Just to make sure we never fell behind or nobody was looking at me like, what should we do? And I didn't have an answer.
Right. This kid doesn't know what he's doing. Get him out of here.
Yeah, exactly. That was my biggest fear. I was like, as long as I just get through the day and don't look like an idiot, I think I'm fine.
Now, how do you deal with agency, clients, and talent on these high profile commercials that you do?
It's tricky. And I will say I feel like that is a huge part, like that skill is a huge part of continuing to work in that arena, because everybody, all those people have power, right? So it's like talent ultimately has all the power, right? So if talent doesn't want to do anything, then it's like they're not doing it, right? Client has power because they're paying for it. So, they'll say, oh, this and that. And then agency has power because it's like they put that idea together. So hopefully they're all in alignment, but often they're not.
Right.
And so
most of the time.
Most time they're not. And so it takes it's a very specific skill to like, manage all these different personalities, but still get what you want to get in the can. You know what I mean? Because you're still there trying to do your best job too. So often for me, I've been fortunate enough to come in usually with the talent side, like with CoverGirl, I came in with Pink and like with a pre-existing relationship with Katie. So it's like, I can always kind of defer to being like with them, So, I can always go, oh, well, Katie doesn't want to do this. So it's like, we can't do that or whatever. You know what I mean?
You're in the talent camp.
I'm on the talent camp. Yeah. At least I try to align myself in that way because they ultimately have all the power. Right. So that's one thing. But, there's been so many instances where you're on set and, the creative director from the agency is wanting to do something. The client's wanting to do something. And you're just really trying to appease it and make your day and your schedule. I don't know if there's any like specific piece of advice other than
just got to do it.
Just be nice. And like, but I think one lesson I've had is that like, there's a limit where I realize that I can't do what I set out to do. And I don't necessarily give up, but I'll sort of like, I know that like someone is like going to overbearingly force their opinion on the production. And I'll fight it for as long as I can. But there's sometimes a point where it's like, okay, like we're just going to do all these ideas that you want to do because I can't even convince you otherwise. So that's not a fun position to be in, but it happens, but most of the time you can usually reason your way out of it. You can be collaborative. You're there also for a reason. You know what I mean? Like they hired you to create something for you to bring your vision to it, for you to like materialize their original idea. So I think that's an important thing not to forget. You're not just there as an employee. It's like you're there to contribute too. So it's really about a balance, knowing when to push back. And actually, here's a piece of advice: picking and choosing your battles. That's a huge thing because sometimes there's things that are worth fighting for as far as like what the creative director or whoever wants to do. And so sometimes it's really important to go, okay, I'm going to let you have this one. We're just going to do that because I know that we're going to like butt heads later and I'm going to want to fight for whatever this thing is later. So picking and choosing your battles is super important. When to just sort of like give in and when to really fight for what you believe in, I think is an important tactic to sort of put in your belt.
It's you're kind of like the opposite Joe Pytka.
Yeah. I don't take the Joe Pytka approach in directing commercials. But I mean, if you can, shoot, do it. Right?
Like
you can,
so just for the audience to know who Joe Pytka is, if you guys have not heard of Joe Pytka is a legendary commercial director who's been around for probably, I'm thinking 50 years. I mean, he's been around forever. And he's worked on, I can't even tell you what he's worked on. He's also director of a feature film called Space Jam. That he did back.
He directed Space Jam. I didn't know that.
He directed Space Jam. Yeah, because it was Michael Jordan, and he did all the Michael Jordan commercials back in the day, and that's how they kind of put it all together. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show. And Joe is legendarily the biggest. Let's say the biggest. He's rough. He's a rough person to deal with. I've heard of stories with him, literally breaking a client's bones or agency's bones while playing basketball.
Oh, wow.
That was his favorite thing. He's like, hey, you have a problem? Let's go play some basketball. And that would be the end of the problem. So he had multiple lawsuits against him over the years.
Yeah.
But he was just one of those guys and like you said, I would never condone that, but I guess if he could do it, I guess that was his process.
The other thing that sort of comes to mind that's really important to like understand, like working in this industry is when and where you have leverage,
Yes, right.
And it's always this balance of like whether or not you have leverage. So for Joe, having, created this massive career, he almost inherently becomes like talent. You know what I mean? Like, this is Joe doing a commercial. So now he has like that talent leverage. So if he throws a hissy fit, if he tells client to screw off, it's just like, it's talent now doing that because he has that leverage because he has that history. You know what I mean?
It's like Michael Bay doing Victoria's Secret commercials. Like he's as important as the models are. Absolutely.
Yeah. So like whatever he says goes, and it's like, you can't really fight him on stuff, right? Because he has that leverage. And so I don't think the goal is to like have enough leverage so you can be like an asshole.
Right.
But like understanding when and where you have leverage is really, really important to sort of assert however you want to navigate the job or your career. Mm-hmm. Because without any leverage, it's like, it's really tough, and even if you're just coming in as a job, like, and you feel like everybody else is sort of like at a higher place than you, you still, there's always an angle where you're like, oh, like, what am I bringing to the table? Like, how can I leverage my benefit to this production to sort of like not get what I want, but make this a good experience or like contribute in a meaningful way. And, knowing what you can and can't do by understanding your leverage, I think is really important.
It's a great piece of advice, actually. A lot of people don't understand leverage and when you can apply it and when you actually have it.
It's a tricky thing to understand. And I think for me, it's taken time, over years to really understand it. And that's honestly the first thing whenever I go into any negotiation or any sort of like any discussion about collaborating or whatever, it's like, I guess mostly with negotiations, I try to identify as fast as I can what my leverage is. You know what I mean? Like, why am I in that room? Why are they asking me to do something? Like, and how do I benefit them? And how can I use that to sort of either, if it's negotiating your deal, like, how can I get the best deal because of my value in this project? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Now, when you're working alongside artists like Pink, Katy Perry, Miley Cyrus, what is the collaborative process like?
It varies. Sometimes it really surprises me how much like free reign I have. You know what I mean? So for some of them, it just depends on the job, obviously. For like when we're doing like CoverGirl stuff, the agency is very specific with the whole campaign and what they need, and you're very regimented. Yeah, exactly, right. But I did these 4 music videos for Pink in 2010 or 11 that were playing for this festival tour she was doing, and the whole theme was like a freak show carnival thing. So her management said, here's 4 songs we want you to write treatments for. General ideas, kind of, it's like she's a circus ringleader and like she's a bearded lady and then she's a giant, like all these different freak show ideas for like these 4 music videos. So I went home and I wrote out 4 different concepts for these 4 different music videos and I sent them off to management and to her, and I didn't hear anything. And I was like, are there notes or like, do you guys, is it good? And then I got a word like, okay, good. We're going to shoot them. And I was like, nothing? no, nothing, no notes, no consideration. It's just like, okay, with first like draft, like we're just going to go shoot it. So that really surprised me. But at that point, we had a really good working relationship, and so they trusted me. But it varies from that, where it's like, Cole, come up with some ideas, and we're just going to go do them, to very, very detailed, specific things. So it really spans the whole range. Like sometimes people are cool, and sometimes they're micromanaging what you're doing. So it doesn't. It varies every time. Unfortunately, I can't be more specific than that.
Sure, of course. Now,
Yeah.
what are some of the challenges of working alongside megastars? Because I'm sure there are some.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, scheduling is the trickiest aspect because they're so busy. It's like, your shoot can always get pushed, last minute. You're there and they're like, oh, they're not coming because they have this extra XYZ thing they got to do. So scheduling is always an issue. And even in the day, they're always like, the crew's doing 12 hours, but they're 3 hours in the chair. And then they have a hard out at this time. So you're really only getting, 6 hours with them. Right. So scheduling is always like a tricky thing. But usually the process is pretty fun and cool. Like most of the time, especially when I'm doing tour stuff, I'm creating stuff for their tour. So they have a vested interest to make it as best as they can. This is for them. I think in the commercial world, it's less for them. If they're doing a campaign for some company, they're doing the campaign for that company. They're less vested in doing everything that they can to make it the absolute best that they can. But when it's for their tour, I get that super hardworking, there to the last minute version of them, because this is for their tour, right?
Right.
A prime example is when we were shooting the stuff for Katy Perry's California Dreams tour. It was this monstrous thing. So basically, I wrote and directed, I think maybe 6 or 7 little short segment videos that played between all the acts of that concert that told a short story throughout the whole show. So the whole concert had a narrative, and these short films interweave between all the acts to tell this little story. So we shot over 3 days on this stage. First day was a build and pre-light, and then we shot 2 days with her. The first day was 14 hours. The second day was almost 17 hours.
Yep.
Insane shoots. But she was there till the last shot, and we're at hour 15. She went up to her green room. She grabbed a bunch of beers, brought them all down for the crew, and just thanked everybody for being there. Handed out beers, and we got the last hour in. So that kind of thing, I'm you're really, you're here working just as hard as everybody else, So that really impressed me and always sort of stayed with me as far as, working with Katie on that.
Now, what are your views on the ever-changing landscape of filmmaking technology?
I mean, that's a great question. I think that there's, like we touched on before, there's so many benefits. I mean, I think that there's some negatives, but there's so many more benefits that I think are so cool with what you can do today. It excites me, the idea that you can, go shoot a feature, edit it on your laptop and put it out to the world is awesome. That literally was there was gatekeepers and you literally could not do that 10 years ago. Right. So that's super exciting. And just how, technology is getting better and better, you can shoot better and better. I think the determining factor now is talent, not so much equipment. Because before it was equipment. If you had access, to film cameras, whether or not you were good, you were making something. And because no one else was making anything, because they didn't have access,
sold.
people were watching. Yeah, it would sell and people would watch it, right?
Right.
So, it's harder to get noticed because everybody's making stuff, but you have that opportunity to go make your own thing, and the cream will rise to the top, and the best stuff will get seen. So I think that's really exciting. And even if your stuff doesn't get seen, just keep making things until you're better, until it does get seen. That's sort of my approach.
That's that's exactly what I say. It was just keep, if you can't be good, be prolific.
Yeah, exactly. Totally. And because people ask me all the time, I want to start directing. I want to start doing this. I'm just go shoot stuff. If you really want to direct, you're going to have a lifetime of making things. So don't be so precious about what you're doing or make something perfect. Go make some garbage. And then next time, make some little bit less garbage, until it becomes good. I push that concept all the time.
Now, how do you achieve a work-life balance, man? Because you're constantly running around all over the world shooting these things. What kind of advice do you have to have that kind of work-life balance, which I think all of us as filmmakers have a problem with, because we're carnies. We're carnies in general.
Of course, yeah. I think that's been like my biggest lesson. You know what I mean? Because, you know, when you first move to LA, it's like you're hustling so hard and you're like trying to get every single job. And it's like, again, Saturday night, 10 o'clock, you could go out or you could like work on a script or like work on some edits. You know what I mean? And so, and when you're really driven, you want to do that, right? And I think that that's good. And I think that there's a part of your career that like you have to put in those hours and you have to put in that work. But at some point, you know, after years and years of doing that, I sort of like took a step back and was like, why am I working so hard?
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show.
Like, I'm just working to work more. I need to really like find this balance. And so it's one of those things for me that I have to actively put effort into creating a balance, into stopping work. You know, certain days like 7 p.m., I'm like, okay, I'm done. I'm taking like a mental break from whatever I'm working on to just not think about work. And I ultimately think that makes me a more productive and a more proficient sort of, creative and worker, rather than just hammering it nonstop. I don't think that actually serves you better. It's important to be able to buckle down, but I have to schedule time to go relax or to go surf or to go work out or whatever. You know what I mean? And I think that it just took time to realize the importance of actually scheduling that in to take a break, because you need it. I'm a better director because I let myself have that balance, I think.
Yeah, because if you burn yourself, if you keep burning and burning and burning, you don't. It just is tough, and especially when you don't have a family, and when you don't have like kids or stuff like that, it's so easy to just keep going.
Oh yeah. And you just become uninspired. You just become tired and uninspired, and like you lose your excitement because you're always just so in the weeds about every little aspect of your career. It's refreshing to take a break and then come back and be like amped to be like, all right, I'm excited to like dive into this script. I'm excited to dive into this edit, and to get back to it. But if you were working nonstop the 3 days prior, you'd be like, oh, like I don't even want to look at this. But you, for some reason, feel obligated, and you force yourself because you think that that's the only way to make it happen.
Sure.
You know, that's why, I mean, it's like balance is the perfect word. It's like you have to bust your ass sometimes, but you have to take a break sometimes too.
Now, can you talk a little bit about the importance of having an audience in today's digital world?
Yeah, I'm realizing that importance now. And the way I realized it was, you know, we touched on this earlier, was like these young kids that are out making videos, you know, that have a couple 100,000 followers, they're getting jobs that I would want as a director. I'm like, wait a second. You know what I mean? Like, you know, these kids are like, I mean, they're making cool stuff. I don't want to discredit them, but like they're, you know, they haven't, they're not as versed in like production, you know, as someone who's like been in the industry for a while, and of no fault of their own, they're just out making content, but they're also getting jobs for brands with decent budgets to make cool stuff that I'm like, I want that job. You know what I mean? So, and they're getting it because their audience is built in. And so upon that realization, and it was mostly this year, I made it like a commitment to push my presence on social media, because it's only going to get bigger. It's not going away. And I think that for me, like where I'm at in my career, like I have enough relationships that like if I never did social media, I'd be fine. I know I'd keep working. I don't get, I mean, I have gotten some jobs from social media and gotten some cool ones that I'm excited about, but the majority of my work doesn't come from that avenue, right? So I feel like I'd be fine without it. But if I invested my time into this aspect of my career, I could get better jobs. I could get more jobs. I can get different jobs that I normally wouldn't get. So I'm really trying to put like energy into it and looking at it like an aspect of my career. Sure, it's fun and it's cool, but I'm like, I need to post every day. I need to make sure I'm like letting people know what I'm working on and like really committing to having a presence, because it's only going to be more valuable to your career as we move forward.
Right, because I was watching some of your vlogs that you have on your YouTube channel, which were, you know, I want to go to Bali and surf.
Yeah, those are so fun. I mean, for me too, like it's the cool thing about the extra little bonus about doing that stuff is that's how I started filming. I just started filming stuff me and my friends and putting together fun videos. So like the idea of these vlogs is very much in the same spirit of who I was when I picked up a camera. And it's like, just film some cool stuff, edit it together cool, and put it out there. That was the essence of like my early beginnings of my career. So it's fun for me to make these videos now and to put them out while I still have other jobs that I'm doing. I still can have that fun that I used to have when I started with a camera.
Very cool. Now,
and also have it be beneficial to my career, so it's a win-win.
Now, what advice would you give a filmmaker wanting to break into the business?
It's interesting because like I've always been obsessed with that question, and I'd Google stories and I'd try to read how people got their big breaks, and the only thing I determined from doing years of research on that is that no one person did it the same way. You know what I mean? That's the only thing. That's the only similarity I could draw. Right. And so the advice would be, because of the way I sort of came up, and I push what worked for me, which is going out, making videos, getting better, and just making as much stuff as you can. And I think that's even more of like a valuable tip today, because you have these avenues of distribution. But it's important to just make cool stuff and to keep making stuff and to keep getting better, because as you get better, people are going to take notice, And I just think it's important to learn by doing rather than, just have you guys should read books too. I'm not saying don't read books, but like, don't just have your head in a book and then think about why you can't go actually make something. Go make something. And also maybe read a book or two, but definitely go make something.
Educate yourself as much as you can. Read books, take online courses, watch YouTube videos, but then go make stuff.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that, most people that are not quite fully jumping in, the step that they're missing is just to go make something. You know what I mean? They're right before they can go pull that trigger and go do it. There's whatever is getting in the way. And there's all these different things that get in the way, be it like money or time or equipment or whatever. But I think that, anybody who's even considering it has that ability. It's like, sure, not everybody in the entire world, but like, you probably have a phone you can go shoot with. You can edit a video on your phone now. And even if you do a short little 30-second thing that has a beginning, middle, and end, that's great practice. And so it's like, you can show your close friends that, or your mom that, and be like, look at this little thing I made. And just like, that's literally where I started. And, all the way up to doing, tour videos for Katie, it was just one step at a time, just getting a little bit better each time. So that's what I push. Go do that for sure.
Now, can you tell me what book had the biggest impact on your life or career?
Oh, that's a great question. Book. There's definitely a few. There's one that stands out as far as for filmmaking. Because when I was learning, I'd buy books and I'd read books, but there's so many books out there that are like these 500-page like filmmaking Bible that like so much information, and like it's really hard they're like hard reads sometimes, and, and they get into all this minutia of stuff that like doesn't really
matter.
Not that it doesn't matter. Well,
it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I've read those books.
Yeah. So I found this one. I think it's called The Bare Bones Guide to Indie Filmmaking. It's super thin. It's like maybe like 40 pages and like has stick drawings in it, but it breaks down just the basics of like what you need to understand like enough about how a camera works and how editing works to like go and make something after that. So it literally is the bare bones, like basics. And I think it's on Amazon for like $15.
Nice.
But that I would tell everybody, like, go buy this book. You can read it in 25 minutes and it explains like what aperture is. It explains like how it changes depth of field. It explains like how much of an angle you want to change when you're getting different angles. Like just the basics that you need to then go be creative within knowing those parameters of like the general filmmaking tools. So I found that book to be really beneficial to clear up a bunch of all the craziness that I was reading in like these 500-page books.
Okay. Now, what lesson took you the longest to learn, whether in the film business or in life?
Well, like we touched on the balance thing.
Okay.
For sure. I would say, there was probably like 5 or 6 years in LA of just grinding nonstop and then having me take a step back and go, wait a second, like where am I enjoying my life? Like after I found a bit of success and been like, okay, I'm not worried about like next month's rent. You know what I mean? I'm okay for a second. Mm-hmm. What am I like how, where is my enjoyment coming from other than just working, you know? And so I think that the balance, it's still a lesson that I'm trying to, you know, navigate around and trying to figure out exactly what the right balance is for me. But for me, it's super important for just my overall happiness. And it's been a work in progress for a number of years now. So I would say, yeah, the balance thing.
And what are 3 of your favorite films of all time?
Oh, it's a great question. That's a hard question, but it's a great question.
Sure.
I've thought about this actually.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show.
So I think, you know, it's very, my answers are sort of classic in some way and not sort of surprising. Like Pulp Fiction for me, because of my age when it came out, it was such a like
atom bomb going off.
Yeah, you know, like that was a film that really like inspired me to tell stories. Like I was so enamored with how that story was told, and I was such an impressionable age. I was just like, you know, my mind was blown on like what you could do in a film, you know? So that was like, that really inspired me to like want to go make films. And then in similar vein, El Mariachi, right, you know, Robert Rodriguez was like, I realized like, oh, I could actually go make something, you know? So like looking at Pulp Fiction was like this huge, you know, sort of a bigger budget thing, like with all these stars. I was like, that seems like a pipe dream a little bit, but I want to do it, you know? Whereas El Mariachi was like, oh, this guy went to Mexico with his buddy and shot this awesome movie. Like, you can do it. You can actually do it. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So those two really like inspired me to go actually pursue film. And then I was at a loss for the third, but I think this is a funny one, but Aladdin is one of my favorite movies that I can watch all the time. And I think it's actually like a really good film to watch for filmmaking because the story is like the story's so good as far as like the setup,
the hero's journey.
Like,
yeah, sure.
Oh, totally. It's such a great like example of that.
Blueprint,
and not only is like it's just a great marriage in between the music and the story and the world that they created. If that's ever on TV, I'm like, I'm definitely watching Aladdin if it ever shows up. You know,
I'll argue. This is the first time I've had Aladdin as one of the out of almost 200 episodes. No one's ever said Aladdin, so I
love Aladdin. Yeah,
that's awesome. No, it's a good flick, man. And Robin,
even the performances, like Robin Williams' performance, is so amazing,
legendary.
The music was amazing. There's nothing at fault with that movie.
so I'm not. I don't know. What do you think about the live action that they're going to do?
Are they doing a live action?
They're doing a live action of all the Disney movies.
Oh, they're doing all of them? You know, I didn't see Beauty and the Beast, so I don't know how that came out. It was
yeah, okay.
Sure.
There were moments, but it's like, no, it's not as good as the first. No.
Of course.
Jungle Book was amazing. Like Jungle Book was really good. And Lion King they're doing right now.
Yeah, and they're doing Mulan too, I hear.
Yes, they're doing Mulan as well. And Cinderella, I didn't.
Oh, wow.
But they made so much money. That's why they could like, wait a minute, how much money can we make? Let's just go back to the well.
Totally. For a business sense, like it makes perfect sense because like people are going to go, well, I mean, I'll definitely go watch Aladdin. I wouldn't expect it. The thing that irks me is I think that people expect to be enamored with like the remake the way they felt about the original.
Yeah,
and then people get disappointed. So I'm like, I'm going to go in being like, I'm going to hate this because it's not as good as the original and then find something that I like about it. You know what I mean?
Right. Now, where can people find you online?
I'm most active on the Instagram is my most active social media platform.
The Instagram, yes.
The Instagram, yeah. Yes. I like calling it the Facebook. The Instagram is kind of how
and the Twitter.
Yeah, the Twitter. So Coleone is a nickname I've had for years. So Colione. And that's kind of like where I put all my stuff out. And then YouTube, of course, for all the vlogs, which is my full name, Cole Walliser, youtube.com/Cole Walliser. I'm on Facebook and stuff, but not really. So those are the two avenues I think you can find me and keep up to date. I mean, also on my website, colewalliser.com, I post everything I create and all my work is on there. So that's a good place to see that stuff. And those would be the 3 spots.
Cole, man, thank you so much for taking the time out to share your adventures in the music video, commercial, and digital content world with us in the tribe, man. I appreciate it.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. It's been great.
hope you guys got some inspiration from Cole and just to know that you guys can go out there and do it no matter what. You don't need film school. You can go out there and just make stuff. Go out and shoot films, make commercials, make music videos, shoot short films, shoot feature films. Educate yourself. There is more than enough education out on the internet alone that it's like having a film school on demand, either from YouTube or getting, low cost online film courses, reading books. Educate yourselves. You can go out there and make it happen. So I want to thank Cole for coming on and inspiring the tribe to go out there and make it happen for themselves. If you want any information about anything we talked about in this episode, please head over to indiefilmhustle.com/215 for the show notes. And in there, of course, we'll have the information about the slam dance talk that I'm going to be doing on Saturday, the 20th, between 2:30 and 4:30 at the Treasure Mountain Inn at the top of Main Street. Now, I have a lot of stuff going on at Sundance this year. We're going to be doing, I already got some amazing interviews lined up. I cannot wait to share them with you. I'm going to probably release them when I get back because I'm just going to be doing too much stuff while I'm there. There will be some other podcasts going out this week. And then I'll start one next week around Wednesday. I'll probably release the next one. And then I'm going to start releasing all of this content out while Sundance is still going on next week. Just wanted to give you guys a heads up. And I've got, a really big kind of thing I'm working on. I'm going to talk to you guys about that later, but just know that there's a big surprise for you guys coming up very, very soon. And I think you guys, your minds are going to be blown when I tell you guys this stuff. So don't forget to share this podcast with as many people as you can, as many filmmakers as you can. Please retweet. Please share stuff on Facebook. Email your friends. Let them know about the podcast because I really want to get this information out to everybody and build up the tribe and build up the indie film hustle movement to show as many filmmakers, screenwriters, and artists out there how to survive and thrive in this film business. So keep that hustle going. Keep that dream alive, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to the Indie Film Hustle podcast at indiefilmhustle.com. That's INDIEFILMHUSTLE.com.